when you're ready, okay?
When I'm ready?
No, Zach will give us the go when he's got.
Okay, got it. Got it.
Okay, so I've hit record, and I'm going to hit go live, and then we're up. We're on.
Welcome, everyone. Everyone that's joining us online virtually, thank you so much for joining us. Tonight, we are going to be starting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving on to 2.0, corrections and modifications to the agenda. Superintendent Macaluso, do you have any corrections or modifications?
Thank you, President Voss. At this time, there are no corrections or modifications to the agenda.
Then I move that we adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
Mrs. Patron, I'll call for the vote, please.
Ms. Clementi?
Aye.
Mr. Farrell?
Aye.
Judge Mays?
Aye.
Mr. Voss?
Aye.
Dr. Wright?
Aye.
We'll move on then to 4.0, gifts to schools. Superintendent Macaluso.
Thank you, President Voss. At this time, I'd ask that the Board of Education approve the following gifts to Pueblo School District 60 in the amount of $2,500. The first gift is from Doug and Jackie Helzer. They donated $1,000 to the East High School baseball program. Next, we have the following individuals donated to the Pueblo South High School baseball program. Daniel Medina donated $1,200. Brad and Kelly Baker donated $200, and Brock Coleman donated $100.
I move that we approve and accept the gifts to schools as presented in tonight's board materials.
Clementi, second.
I'll call for the vote, please.
Ms. Clementi?
Aye.
Mr. Farrell?
Aye.
Judge Mays?
Aye.
Mr. Voss?
Aye.
Dr. Wright?
Aye.
As always, thank you so much to all of our donors and for impacting the lives of our kids. Moving on now to 5.0, recognition. Superintendent Macaluso.
Thank you, President Voss. At this time, I'd like to introduce Mr. Rick Macias, and he's going to provide a recognition for our 2020 Class 4A State Wrestling Champions. Mr. Macias?
Thank you, Superintendent Macaluso. Good evening, President Voss, school board members, and Superintendent Mrs. Macaluso. This evening, we are recognizing the 2020 4A CHASA State Runner-Up Wrestling Team and the District 60 individual state placers, including the 2 state individual state champions. First, we will start off with our state placers. In 5th place at 132 pounds, Anthony Flores, East High School. 5th place at 113 pounds, Anthony Franklin, East High School. 5th place at 170 pounds, Xavier Freeman, East High School. 5th place at 285 pounds, Victor Sosa, South High School. 3rd place at 138 pounds, Sebastian Freeman, East High School. 2nd place at 113 pounds, Dominic Castro, Centennial High School. 2nd place at 145 pounds, Aiden Valdez from East High School, and he is a 3-time state runner-up. And our state champions at 120 pounds and just a freshman, Weston Dalton, East High School. And last but not least, Pueblo's first time 4-time state champion at 285 pounds, senior Andy Garcia. Congratulations, gentlemen, for your hard work. Now I would like to recognize the 2020 State 4A runner-up team. After last year's state championship title, the East High Eagles placed second to Windsor, the team that they beat last year and the team they lost to in 2018. This is the Eagles wrestling team's second place finish at state. And now the team members at 106 pounds, L.J. Herberger, 113 pounds, Anthony Franklin, 120 pounds, Weston Dalton, 125 pounds, Tatum Rivera, 132 pounds, Anthony Flores, 138 pounds, Sebastian Freeman, 145 pounds, Aiden Valdez, 152 pounds, Noah Rivera, 160 pounds, Diego Duarte, 170 pounds, Xavier Freeman, and 285 pounds, Andy Garcia. The Eagles are coached by head coach Patrick Laughlin, assistant coaches Zach Valdez, and John Lewis. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Macias. We are so extremely proud of all of our students. It takes lots of individual determination and lots of teamwork. And so certainly that's a recognition that's well-deserved. Congratulations to all.
We'll move on
Yes.
now to, sorry,
If
go
I
ahead.
could just ask whether they have received their patches.
They received their patches at their banquet that they had prior.
Good.
So they did
Wonderful.
get them earlier.
Great, thank you.
We'll move on now to public comment. Mr. Sprouse.
Citizens are cordially invited to attend all regular or special board meetings. The board welcomes any citizen to express an interest or comments related to the operations of the schools. Citizens who wish to speak to the board about school matters are invited to do so during the public comment section of the meeting agenda. Individuals intending to speak were allowed to leave a recorded message earlier today. The board will not be able to respond to individual questions at the meeting. Complaints against any employee should be sent to the superintendent or board in writing with your signature. Speakers should keep in mind that students often attend or view our board meetings. Speakers' remarks, therefore, should be suitable for an audience that includes kindergarten through 12th grade students. The board president may interrupt, warn, or terminate a speaker's statement that is unrelated to the business of the school district, is inappropriate for K-12 students, or is disruptive to an orderly, productive meeting.
And first up tonight, we have Cameron Valdez.
Hello, my name is Cameron Valdez. My email is c.valdez8201@gmail.com. I am a senior from East High School, and I'm here to advocate for an in-person graduation ceremony to be held at a later date over the summer. I would first like to start by thanking the school board for taking the thoughts and feelings of the senior class into consideration. The class of 2020 is a dedicated and hardworking group of individuals who knows what it's like to fight for a good cause. We fought alongside our educators in 2018. We fought to protect our schools and pass the bond. Once again, we are fighting, but now it is for ourselves and for the recognition that we deserve. We have worked hard for the last 13 years to make it to this point. Even now, in the midst of this pandemic, we are fully committed to our education and to our success. It is no question that we have earned a proper graduation like every class preceding us. The problem at hand is whether or not an in-person graduation would pose a significant threat to public health. As of April 27th, there have been close to 14,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Colorado, according to the Colorado Department of Public Health. Of these cases, there have been approximately 700 deaths, resulting in only a 5% mortality rate. However, the mortality rate of individuals between 10 and 19 years of age is only 0.15% in Colorado. To reiterate, the likelihood of endangering any student who will be attending graduation is less than 1%, and these percentages are likely to decline even further by this summer. Many of my classmates have expressed their desire to boycott a virtual graduation ceremony. As we have already seen, the Air Force Academy has conducted an in-person graduation following proper safety protocols, which shows that this is a possibility. Similarly, Colorado Springs District 20 is also preparing to present a plan for an in-person graduation. I believe that it is still too premature to cancel an event as monumental to the community as graduation, especially as the rest of the community begins to reopen to the public starting May 1st. It is clear that there are reasonable and achievable solutions out there if the school board is willing to dedicate the necessary time and thoughtfulness to the class of 2020 that it deserves. Once again, I thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I sincerely hope you consider this proposal.
Thank you, Cameron. Next up, we have Cole Johnson.
Hello, school board. My name is Cole Johnson. Email address cj7335@d60student.org. I'm sure that this has been an arduous process for all of you, with all of the late night phone calls, emails, and text messages, trying to figure out what will be in the best interest of students within our district in the name of public health. However, my experience in the stakeholder meetings taught me that these difficult decisions can only be made with the input of community members who can provide insight that people may have been unaware of previously. It is in the best interest of my fellow students that I say this. I have lost more friends to suicide than I have from any sickness. So many of my peers feel as though each loss of our senior year is like another death, the death of our dreams and aspirations. We will never get to experience our last senior night, our state championship qualification that many of us have been working towards since we were little kids, see the victories of teams we have built from the ground up with our leadership and experience, and we will never get to see these victories celebrated in the ways that we deserve. That is why I'm asking you to take action today. Please discuss this issue today. You can make this right today. I have a friend at Central who fathered a child through his freshman year, and every moment, every struggle, every late night of his high school career has been a step towards getting to walk across that stage with his peers. I speak not only for myself, but for the people whose voices are usually silenced in times like these. I'm humbly asking the school board to help these kids, postpone their decision as every other school board in the state has, that we are able to prioritize the mental health of our students just as much as their physical health. Over 800 parents of seniors in our district have joined a Facebook group in support of this issue, and if that doesn't speak for what this high school community wants, then I don't know what will. I've had people approach me as a student leader, asking my thoughts on the matter, looking for a voice of reason in a time when things are so uncertain. I've had many seniors approach me to tell me that they would rather not attend a virtual graduation than be so dishonored by a cheapened memory and be told to just suck it up once again. There's been no call to action, no emotionally charged grants, just a lot of seniors who have been suffering alone and are ready for a victory. They're ready for some help. I'm asking you to set a graduation date of July 18th. If you do this, you will have an entire community backing and make this feasible. But if you don't, you risk a class and a community that presents this district for what it has done to snub out their concerns. The choice is up to you, and I'm hoping and praying that you make the right one. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Cole. Next up, we have Timothy Chambers Micallef.
Hello, I am Timothy Chambers McAuliffe. My email is timothy.chambersmcaul@pueblocityschools.us. Hello, I am Timothy Chambers McAuliffe, a fourth grade teacher at Irving Elementary and a first-year teacher. On Thursday, April 23rd, I received a phone call from my principal, Valerie Davis, informing me that she will be recommending me for non-renewal. The reasons she cited are safety in the classroom and a lack of respect between students and towards the teacher. This concerns me because my final effectiveness rating was effective. Prior to the phone call on April 23rd, the concern of safety in the classroom has not been brought to my attention either verbally or in writing by my principal or any other administrators. I am not aware of any ongoing safety issues in my classroom. I recognize that there may have been concerns with respect in my classroom, and there were steps being taken to create a more respectful atmosphere with assistance from administrators. But these steps were interrupted by building closures due to COVID-19. I also feel I've had inadequate support from my administration. For example, I was assigned an instructional coach that observed and met with me to provide feedback. However, the coach was changed at the beginning of the spring semester, and I have only been able to meet the second coach 2 to 3 times. Since I am a first-year teacher, I am assigned a mentor in the first semester of the school year. However, I have not been able to meet with my mentor consistently due to differing content areas and schedules. Because of these reasons, I don't believe I should be considered for non-renewal for the coming school year. Thank you for listening, and I hope you reconsider. A copy of this appeal has been emailed to each of you, as well as a copy of my final effectiveness rating under the subject heading Timothy Chambers McAuliffe, Non-Renewal Appeal and Effectiveness Document. Thank you, and have a good day.
Thank you, Timothy. Next up, we have Sherry Krasovic.
Sherry Krasovic, John 1364 at msn.com. We respectfully ask the district tonight to set the date for a July graduation celebration for the class of 2020. Recommended dates, July 24th and 25th, with all the practical safety and social distancing measures in place for our seniors. We are asking for board action tonight to take the stress off our seniors and families and commit to a date for an in-person graduation with their classmates. Other districts around the state are proceeding with plans with an in-person commencement after input from their seniors and communities. In my opinion, District 60 failed to do this. Please reach out to our local health department experts for guidance for present and future public gatherings as things are changing often. We supported the bond passing students and families of this community. Now we are asking to support our seniors. We understand the virtual graduation is happening and the district is moving forward. As each senior received communications on Sunday, the date specified for each school, seniors to show up in their caps and gowns in limited numbers. Confirm and receive diploma covers. Take a picture and leave campus promptly. My senior Wildcat is sad and heartbroken over this virtual ceremony. He is our last child to graduate. This is not how we want to remember his graduation. We are advocating to salvage this milestone our seniors have looked forward to all young lives. We want to send them off proudly into the next phase of life. Some seniors, this may be the only time they will walk across the stage and be recognized by their classmates' families and celebrate together this rite of passage. We are asking to please allow them this moment to shine and share their accomplishments. This is a unique situation we are in. It's unfair that this class has to be the first with no traditional graduation ceremony. You have the opportunity and the power to change this. The class of 2020 faced unprecedented obstacles, challenges. They deserve to walk, proudly accept their diplomas, turn their tassels to the other side. They deserve to be honored and remembered. Respectfully submitted, Sherry Krasovic.
Thank you, Sherry. Next up, we have Jason Wilson.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Board of Education, my name is Jason Wilson. I'm a fifth-year counselor at Highland Park Elementary, where I served for 4 years, 3 years of which I've been the RTI coordinator, no bully implementation coach, conflict resolution group facilitator. I have over 3 years of teaching experience at CSU Pueblo, which contributes to the classes that I teach often to our students. I served on various committees for several years, such as District Health and Wellness Task Force, No Bully Peace Summit, uniting over 60 community partners and stakeholders to our Counseling Community Resource Fair. Most recently was invited to the Teachers Foundation Music Festival. I say that not to impress you, but to impress upon you that my commitment towards excellence in regards to serving our students and their families is appropriate. I'm a global citizen who has a broad spectrum of international experiences and have returned to Pueblo to give back to the same gifts that were given to me as an alumnus of Pueblo City Schools and CSU Pueblo. I'm challenging my non-renewal status, which was based on partially proficient rating on my RAND evaluation. I'm here to defend my honor and integrity with respect to the fact that comments made by my administrator are inaccurate and not supported by data. I'll defend my position with a substantial body of qualitative and quantitative data. The significant body of evidence accounts for 100% of how my time was used servicing the day-to-day needs of our students, faculty, and families in our building. It should be noted that Highland Park is one of the largest elementary schools in the district. Our IEP population is about 18 to 20%, and our RTI population is near or of equal value. Our school specializes in autism and other cognitive special needs. My body of data will reveal the nature of all student episodes, numerous occasions where I was forced into disciplinary roles as an interim principal when my administrators are out of the building, real-time behavior data for all 480 minutes of each school day, and empirically based documentation used to consult and assist student and academic growth. Other inappropriate information written on my evaluation that is not permissible in the scope of my practice. I was denoted for not administering psychological inventories to students, which is only to be conducted by our school psychologists or outside agencies such as Health Solutions after obtaining parental consent. RTI data that was reported as missing or inaccurate is heavily documented in Alpine, which is also reveals that my administrators were not in attendance for RTI meetings, but on rare occasions, including transitional meetings and IEP plans. All written data is saved in Alpine during our meetings. I hope that you'll grant me the opportunity to discuss my grave concerns in further detail. Thanks for your time and consideration. Jason Wilson, jason.wilson@pueblocityschools.us. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Next up, we have Jamie Johnson.
Hello, District 60 Superintendent Macaluso, Assistant Superintendent Maury, and Board Members Voss, Mays, Farrell, Clementi, and Wright. I am Jamie Johnson, Cole Johnson's mother. Cole is a senior and student body president of Central High School. My email address is jamers, Jamers, @comcast.net. Today, I am urging you to take board action at your meeting tonight. This action must include a formal poll of seniors and an in-person graduation scheduled in July at Dutch Clark Stadium if that is what comes of the poll. You have the opportunity tonight to make things right for these seniors. You rushed into a decision that is affecting these students and their families more than you could ever know. My amazing son and every other senior I talk to are depressed. Parents and students I've never met call me every night because they know I have been trying to get you all to hear my concerns for these students' mental health. None of you reached out to me after my heartfelt letters went out to you except for Mrs. Wright and Mr. Voss. I want you to know that when you made the virtual graduation announcement phone call in early April, I didn't at first understand what Cole was feeling. I thought it could be a cool experience for him and his friends to have a virtual graduation. As soon as I said that to him, he started screaming and crying. He went for a long run and cried, and man screamed in the shower. He won't tell you this as it is embarrassing and painful to him. Every parent I've taken the time to listen to has said a similar thing to me. This is real to these students. I didn't understand this at first, and I'm sure you didn't either. Your actions about this graduation are going to determine if the class of 2020 has closure they so desperately need and want with an in-person graduation, or if they despise you and are going to try to work against you with their full force. I want to support their wishes the best way I am able. Why aren't you? Please don't tell me it's about safety. I am a dentist. I am responsible solely for the safety of my patients and staff. I am up to my eyeballs in safety right now and trying to walk out the door so that I can have a safe day at my office. We all need more love and listening and help. Help these students. You have the power to do this. Do the right thing. Hold the students, and when you see what I'm so clearly living, schedule a safe, in-person graduation in the heat of the summer at Dutch Clark Stadium. You will have my personal full support, and I will help you in any way possible. I will personally donate gloves to each student and help raise money so that every student can have a mask and be safe at Dutch Clark Stadium. I will, if you choose to proceed with a virtual ceremony, I am not going to help you. I will continue to help my son and all of the seniors and families who reach out to me nonstop. I am a mom. I urge you to do a simple poll of 1 in-person or 2 virtual for each senior. Do it tomorrow. Give them a choice that both you and they can live with. That's parenting 101. Don't make them fight against you. Don't continue to force this virtual graduation on them. You might win, but lose them forever in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Next up, we have Matthew Pierce.
My name is Matthew Pierce, and my email is matthew.pierce@pueblocityschools.us. I am a third-year teacher for Pueblo. Currently, I am employed at Heaton Middle School as a language arts teacher. I was expecting an engaging and professional evaluation that would really help me improve as a teacher. I was anticipating constructive feedback that I could use to refine my skills and to help me set goals for the future. Unfortunately, this was not the case. After my first evaluation, my evaluator told me, "You did a good job," with little feedback offered. I asked the evaluator if I could see the evaluator rubric, and he stated that he didn't have one. My next evaluation went the same. I was given very little feedback, told I was doing a good job. I asked again about the rubric and was told I worried too much. The evaluator called for a third evaluation. The reason they offered was because of the weather and the late start. I wasn't too concerned because I had been successful with my student data, my informal observation feedback was great, and I had plenty of evidence that I performed very well throughout the year. I had been praised on my performance multiple times and had no reason to expect something was wrong. Then I got the only evaluator rubric a week and a half before the school closed due to COVID-19. Upon review, it appeared that the comments were written for another teacher and then hastily copied and pasted into my evaluation, with my name put into the blanks. It was full of provable inaccuracies, untruths, and very spiteful in nature. When I had my final post-evaluation meeting, I was prepared. I had uploaded mountains of solid, provable evidence into Randa that clearly showed that the evaluator was mistaken. Most of my evidence was completely ignored. I was given a low final score, and not long after, I was notified I would be recommended for non-renewal. This evaluation does not in any way reflect who I am as a teacher or as a person. It is unprofessional, very inaccurate, contradictory, and damaging. It does not follow the rules that the district put forward for evaluations. It does not reflect the feedback I have received throughout the year or my positive student data. The evaluation system should not be misused this way. This should never happen to any teacher, ever. It's just not right. I would greatly appreciate the board taking a pause, reviewing the documents, and looking further into this matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthew. Next up, we have Tess Hull.
Hello, my name is Tess Hull, and my email is tessie.hull12@gmail.com, and I am a current senior at South High School. I'm asking the board, as well as Mrs. Macaluso and Mrs. Mori, to reconsider their initial decision to only have a virtual graduation for the graduating class of 2020. Again, I ask that the board, Mrs. Macaluso and Mrs. Mori, set a date for an in-person graduation in July at the board meeting tonight, April 28th, 2020. This, of course, being only if Governor Polis and the Pueblo County Health Department deems that larger gatherings are fine and would have the ability to allow all safety guidelines, to follow all safety guidelines, This will also allow for seniors to make appropriate and safe plans for social gatherings and celebrations for graduation. I find it difficult to understand why input from seniors as well as the community is not asked for. Many other districts have asked their community members to take a poll as to what the vast majority of their citizens wanted, while the decision in our district was made without consulting any community members or seniors. I believe that a formal poll should have been taken before moving forward excessively with the virtual graduation. I fully understand why we will not be going back to school this year and understand why that was the right course of action. However, I would greatly appreciate if board members, Mrs. Macaluso and Mrs. Mori, would take a chance to reconsider graduation. I strongly suggest that the board members consider that we could easily have a graduation in July and have it outside and obey the 6-foot rule at Dutch Clark Stadium where graduation used to be held. Also, in light of our mayor, Mr. Bradshaw, and the Pueblo Department of Public Health and Environment making it possible to play golf within reason, I believe that we should be able to space ourselves out enough in order to successfully and safely have a graduation at Dutch Clark Stadium. Also with this, we must take appropriate courses of action, like only allowing 2 to 4 tickets per graduate, which would limit the amount of people in the stands, thus still enforcing the 6-foot rule and leaving a suitable amount of space between each family. In addition, if graduation is to be held at Dutch Clark Stadium, it would be a fun opportunity for students to decorate masks to wear similar to decorating graduation caps. To sum up everything up, I firmly believe that board members, Mrs. Macaluso and Mrs. Mori, should consider senior options as well as the public's opinion to postpone graduation for an in-person date in July. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tess. Next up, we have Xavier Otta.
My email is xavierada02@gmail.com. My name is Xavier Ada, and I am a senior from Pueblo East High School. While I'm disheartened to be put in a position during my senior year to craft this message, I would regret it if I did not take the opportunity to communicate the impact that D60's decision to cancel graduation has had. During a recent conversation between Superintendent Macaluso and D60 students, it was clear that her decision was set, and she was simply talking to students as a course of pacifying students, and there was no intention of considering an alternative to cancellation of our graduation ceremony. With that, I want to address this communication directly to the elected D60 board members. As described on your website, the board acts as a court of appeal for staff members, students, and the public on issues involving board policy or implementation of that policy. The district clearly lists the social and emotional well-being of our students as important as their academic needs, and community heritage, traditions, and history in its core values. If you are not a member of the graduating class of 2020, you cannot understand our disappointment, our pain, and our frustration. We have been stripped of our senior prom, our senior ditch day, yearbook signing, our last concerts, our last games, and a host of other events that make being a high school senior so special. While I can come to grips about missing those events, the absolute pinnacle of our academic achievement to date is our commencement ceremony. To add to the pain of missing out on so many memories and the reaction that the district has shown to the decision of our commencement ceremony. While our counterparts in D70 have at least had the opportunity to have a discussion about this, D60 made the decision for us with no discussion or feedback from its most important stakeholders, the students. As elected leaders, you were once asked for the votes of our families so you could serve on the District Board of Education. I ask that you demonstrate the qualities that you once said you would bring to the board if elected. Qualities such as leadership, accountability, and transparency. During my high school career, I've not had my education compromised, but not once, not twice, but 3 times. During the teacher strike, protests about school closures, and now the decision to cancel our commencement ceremonies. With all this kept in mind, I hope that you would truly consider the impact that your decision has made on your students. Thank you.
Thank you, Xavier. Next up, we have Dr. Jim Valenzuela.
Hello, neighbors. This is Jim Valenzuela. I want to congratulate you. It looks like and sounds like the East and South are going to be fabulous with regard to energy performance. I became involved partly with the Steel City Goes Platinum project, so I will be providing resources ongoing for the entire bond initiative for your help. And finally, I would just say that with regard to the high schools in this moment of design, architecture, engineer, build, we involve CSU Pueblo students and maybe K through 12. CSU Pueblo has a lead lab of leadership and energy efficiency and design, and I would ask that you communicate with Drew Hershon regarding the curricular opportunities and the design opportunities for K-12. And that's all I got. Have a great meeting.
Well, thank you everyone for letting your voice be heard. Moving on now to 7.0 communications board comments.
Mr. Boss, this is Dennis Mays. I wonder if I might have a moment to address something, please?
Sure.
Dr. Johnson brought up that she had written to numerous board members, and I confirmed that. And I appreciate that. And she indicated that she had only received calls back or answers back from Mr. Voss and Dr. Wright. I think you can confirm this, Mr. Voss, but it is our board policy, and I think Dr. Johnson should know that when we speak through you, and we were expecting you to respond to these emails. I specifically recall talking with you personally about Dr. Johnson and asked if you would be telling her that in fact I had received it and that you were speaking on our behalf. So it's not a matter of the board not wanting to get back to anybody. It's the policy that I believed we had established and that I thought we were following. So I just wanted to make that clear.
And as we move into communications and board comments here, Judge Mays, you beat me to it. I was going to say that we've received a lot of different emails about graduation, and I just wanted to assure the community your emails are being read. We do have a board practice that the president communicates to any emails or communications that are put out to the entire board. I have responded to almost all the emails that I have received. I know I've received a few more last night and throughout today as well. So I'll be responding to those too. And if I didn't get to your email, I would ask that you please respond again. That way I can make sure to get to it. And I'm also available by phone. So I'd be happy to talk to anyone over the phone. But I just wanted to assure everyone that we are reading your emails and your voice is being heard.
President Voss.
Yes, Dr. Wright.
I would just like to say it was my understanding that as an individual board member that I could thank people for reaching out. So my practice has been when I receive emails to thank them for sharing. And then, as you know, I've forwarded to and sometimes the other board members the emails that I thought that we should look at. So if that is a practice that should not be done, if I should not thank them as an individual, just let me know. I do have an additional comment. I'm not sure if this time is appropriate, but if so, I would like to be able to say that as well. Mr. President, I see you've lost your audio.
Taylor, it looks like you're muted, so if you could try to unmute your microphone.
Anybody hear me?
We can hear you now, but it's very low. You're unmuted.
Mr. President, can you hear me now?
President Voss, it looks like you're muted now. So if you could try to unmute again, and then let's work on your audio. Now you're unmuted. Let's try it again. We can hear you now.
Okay, great. Sorry about that, everybody.
No
Doc,
worries.
if you can go back, I apologize.
Did you hear my statement about my understanding that as an individual board member, I can thank people for reaching out to us? And then I can forward onto the board members their emails. So if it's inappropriate, let me know. I understood that you're our spokesperson, that you send out the notification. I've actually thanked you for what you've said. But if I'm not to thank them myself, then just let me know. And I have another comment, please, if you don't mind.
I would just say, for me being on the board the past 3 years, what I've done is acknowledge people's emails and just said, thank you for reaching out. And the practice of the board is for the president to communicate to address whatever that email includes. So that is our official practice.
Well, thank you very much. And I would just like to say, I'm not sure if this is the right time, but as requested before, respectfully, I would like to ask us to consider holding the in-person graduation later this year and perhaps late summer, June, and planning in concert with the safety precautions at that time.
And I would say later on in the agenda, we have a COVID report. Questions and discussion can happen at that point, but right now I think we're just looking for any other board comments or communications that you all may have.
President Voss, I have one communication, and that would be that the 2020 census is still happening. So I think the Pueblo self-reporting rate is about 54% right now. And I would just encourage everybody in our community that is tied to much funding for our community in terms of school lunches, various programs in our community. And so if you haven't filled out your survey, you still have time to fill out your survey. Please consider going to my2020census.gov and you can get that filled out. It's a very quick and easy process. It takes less than 5 minutes. And just want to let everybody know that everybody matters and everybody counts. So please, I would encourage you to fill out your 2020 census. Thank you.
And this is Barb Clementi, if I may, Mr. President. A couple things. Thank you, Superintendent Macaluso, for reminding us about the census. That is so very important. I have two additional things. We know that next week is Teacher Appreciation Week. This has been these extraordinary circumstances have been difficult on all of us. And I know that our teachers have gone, and all of our educators have gone way above and beyond to do everything they can to make this end of the semester be as meaningful as possible. I believe that as a board, we'll do an actual recognition later in the month, but I want to just put it out there that we are mindful that and very, very appreciative of all our educators. And secondly, I'd like to bring Fair Tax Colorado to everyone's attention. This is a ballot initiative that will create a fairer state tax for all of our residents. As it is right now, we have a flat tax and everyone pays the same percentage of income for state tax, which means that those of us who make $50,000 and $60,000 a year pay the same percentage of income as those who make $500,000 a year. This would rectify that and may be one of our only options to salvage the state budget this year and in the coming years from the huge downturn. You can find a lot of information at fairtaxcolorado.org. I hope to look at it, and certainly I'm available by phone or by email with any kind of discussion or questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clementi. Mr. Farrell, any communications?
Oh, unfortunately, in our present situation, I haven't been able to attend a lot of events, but Board Member Clementi and I have been listening into the Design Advisory Committee meetings for our two new high schools. And there was a public presentation last week, I think. Time's lost meaning to me for the most part, but I think it was last week. and there are some exciting things happening that we can look forward to. And there will be other public meetings in the future. Whether those will be virtual or not, I don't know, but I would encourage people to participate and learn more about what's going on. Thank you.
President Mays, do you have any other communication?
No, thank you, President Voss.
If there are no other communications, we will move on to 9.0 reports. Superintendent Macaluso.
Thank you, President Voss. At this time, I'd like to introduce you to Ms. LaDon Beatty, who serves as the MGT turnaround specialist. And I believe we also have Dr. Harry Boole with us, and they're going to present an update regarding the MGT report, specifically at Risley International Academy of Innovation. Welcome.
Thank you.
Superintendent Macaluso. Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Mori, are you going to do an additional introduction, or is it to us now? I think I've missed my script. I apologize.
No, I think you're good to go, Dr.
Okay.
Boole.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. President Voss, members of the board, and Superintendent Macaluso, thank you for the opportunity to join you this evening and give you an update on MGT's work at Risley International Academy of Innovation. Joining me this evening is the turnaround specialist for MGT at Risley, Ms. LaDon Beatty, and I'm going to turn it over to her to conduct or to give you the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Harry. I did think Suzanne was going to provide us with an introduction, but good evening, Superintendent Macaluso, Assistant Superintendent Mori, and D60 Board of Education. It's good to be with you this evening, although unusual circumstances. Our first slide is, oh, sorry. This is just an overview. I'm trying to toggle back between these notes. This is what this PowerPoint will contain: an overview of our turnaround plan, as well as the different priorities that were our focus this year. And there's going to be a little bit, Harry's going to close us up with the end with a little bit about possibly looking ahead toward next year. So go ahead with next slide, Suzanne. All right, and Harry introduced himself, and I'm LaDon Beatty. I am the turnaround specialist. Not with us this evening are two of our coaches, Sandra Dam, who is our English language arts coach, and Renee Reyes Garcia, who was our math coach. All right, so turnaround work is complex, and priorities have to be identified to focus the work. This slide names MGT's 3 priority areas for year 1 and was presented to the Board of Education. I think it was at the November board meeting. The following slides and the packet that you received are data reports that address each of these 3 priority areas. Okay. Want to make sure we're on the same slide. All right, Suzanne, would you go down one more slide? I'm sorry, this does not, my slide isn't matching yours. Okay, seems to be missing a slide. What I want to talk about, go ahead and go back one more, Suzanne. I'm sorry that for some reason my slide isn't matching yours. You all received copies of the MGT turnaround, the full plan, several weeks ago, and it was presented to Superintendent Macaluso and Assistant Superintendent Mori in January. The plan details the MGT framework for turnaround through those 3 priority areas and how that work deepens over the course of 3 years. I'm going to provide just an overview of that plan for you, of those 3 priority areas, just to underscore why we focus our support there. First of all, leadership matters, and you know that that's the very first priority area. Turnaround leadership development is MGT's top priority. Of the 3 levers of focus in year 1, you'll note the priority emphasis is on actions and supports to build the capacity of the principal to organize and lead for turnaround work. Without building that capacity, the instructional infrastructure and establishing strong culture systems in schools will be marginalized. A school might have pockets of excellence, but not a system of excellence. Our second priority that's detailed in the plan, the instructional infrastructure, which has 2 components, teacher practice and data-driven instruction. The core of any school transformation effort begins with instruction. Using data, state standards, existing curriculum maps, we build teacher capacity with an emphasis on understanding the rigor of the standards and instructional pedagogy. A core component of improving the instructional infrastructure involves data-driven instruction to create an evidence-based approach to better serve students. We work with the school leaders to create and implement a cohesive assessment strategy. And the third year 1 priority was to improve the student culture systems. And turnaround principals must create or improve a climate that is safe and focused on teaching and learning. Principals often have to reculture a school, especially in terms of within the school, safety and discipline. Our work this year has prioritized getting foundational systems in place. These included clear positive behavior systems, consistent structures for day-to-day operations. The full turnaround plan that was sent to you a couple of weeks ago describes in detail the MGT action steps to get the 3 priority areas in place this year, as well as the work for years 2 and 3. So thanks, Suzanne. So speaking of the leadership development, MGT measures leadership development in a variety of ways. And you can see at the top of the slide that it gives you a page on your appendix, addendum, whatever, of pages 2 and 3. You can only see a small view of this, but I've tried to provide a larger view with more of a narrative as an example on that addendum, pages 2 and 3. So MGT measures leadership development in these variety of ways, from the purpose and quality of leadership team meetings to the impact of teacher observations, PLC meetings, progress monitoring, through identified data. And each month I review the expectations and indicators, as well as our goals for year 1 in the MGT turnaround plan. Again, your addendum document there on page 2 and 3, you're going to see an expanded version for, like I said, just October and March, and it'll have notes so you can see how the evidence for the ratings were determined. So this addendum provides the record of progress, and you can see that the school, in terms of leadership development, did make quite a bit of progress over the year. We still had a number of areas we were working on. So this slide, and you can see if you look on your addendum or appendix on page 4, the targets and goals from this slide are taken from the Risley UIP. The following slides are going to provide the indicators of progress to date through interim and monthly data reports as identified in the UIP. All right, so our MI, our math inventory goal this year was to decrease the percent of students scoring below basic by 25% from the beginning of the year to end of year. As you can see, we fell short of our math inventory goals in 6th grade by quite a bit. Now, our last assessment we were able to give was in March, but you can see we're quite a ways still from the end of the year goal we had hoped to see in decreasing. We only had a 6% decrease. And Suzanne, if you'll go to the next slide, thank you. We came much closer to meeting our goals in both 7th and 8th grade. We reduced the percentage of students scoring below basic by 20%, and our goal was 25%. And we also increased the percent of students scoring at grade level. Again, I want to remind everybody that we were only able to take March data. All right. And again, similar gains made in 8th grade. We saw a 20% reduction in students scoring below basic and an increase in students in the on and above grade level range. Okay. All right. Our ANET math goal was to increase the average percent correct on the assessment from 23% in A1 to 30% by A2. Because of school closures, we only have the data for A1 and A2. ANET data confirmed what we found in our math inventory data. We didn't have significant increases in students scoring at or above grade level. On the next slide, though, we do have another view. Although we didn't meet our goal of increasing the average percent correct, and you really may want to turn in your addendum to page 7 for this one, because the slide, it's difficult to read. We did find, I'm sorry, I have a little background noise here. We did find ANET data confirmed what we saw in the math inventory. We reduced the percent of students who were performing in the lowest bands on the ANET interim assessments. Both MI and ANET assessments show that we are moving students out of the lowest performing bands, and we have a larger percent of students who are in the approaching standard bands. Our reading inventory data. So our reading inventory goal was to increase the percent of students scoring proficient by 20% from beginning of the year to the end of year. While we made gains toward our reading inventory goals, we only met our mid-year goal on it, but these were, again, March reading inventory assessments. And you can go ahead and go to the next slide. Again, we didn't meet our end of year goal in 7th grade, only increasing the percent of students at or above grade level by 7%. This was pretty disappointing. However, we saw a larger decrease in the percent of students scoring in the lowest bands on the reading inventory. Okay. Our 8th grade had a bit stronger results with a 13-point increase by March in students scoring on each grade level. You'll see similar results in our 8th grade ANET scores. 8th grade really showed their strongest percent gains for students at grade level, but an equal amount scoring, or nearly an equal amount scoring above grade level. Our ANET goals were a little different. ANET calculates by percent correct. So we set a goal to increase the average percent correct from an overall, our first ANET showed an overall 31% correct in A1 to 40% by A2. We were trying to reach a goal of 50% by the end of the year. Our mid-year ANET interims were a high point for us as we actually exceeded those middle of the year goals, those mid-year goals. And 2 of our 3 grade levels, 7th and 8th grade, exceeded the end of year goals at mid-year. In addition, you can see 7th and 8th grade both exceeded the network average. And I checked back, I was only able to check back a year, but I was also giving anecdotal data that they have never exceeded network average before. So we had a lot to celebrate, particularly with our ANET assessments. Slide 17, the next slide shows another view of this. And again, you can see it much better if you'll look in your packet on page 8. This slide shows our English Language Arts ANET data in a different way. You can see both the reduction of students in our lowest performing bands, as well as significant increases in the percent of students scoring in grade level bands. Okay. That was our academic data. The next data report that I'm going to talk about here is, in addition to increases in student achievement, another way MGT kind of triangulates data on teacher performance is through a monthly supportive teacher needs rubric. Your addendum includes a copy so you can see the descriptors of each of these indicators or measures of teacher effectiveness. As we saw an increase in student performance, we could also see our evaluation of teacher support needs reflect that change. We have a large number of early career teachers. For example, Risley has 10 math and English language arts teachers. Of those 10, 4 are in their first year of teaching, and another 3 were in their second or third year of teaching. So a lot of time was spent building instructional capacity this year through PLCs, professional development, and observations with multiple forms of feedback. While we saw growth in our teachers, 50% of our entire Risley staff are still in the conscious category, but all of them have made gains, and we are on a positive trajectory with a very young staff. Our final data slide is our student attendance. Our student attendance goal, we simply did not come close to where we had hoped to be. Student attendance is one of the most serious concerns at Risley. When we look at academic performance and how close we actually were to meeting many goals, attendance is a primary factor in those results. Students can't learn if they're not in school. The strategies we've been employing over the past several years haven't been effective because attendance has pretty much stayed stagnant. We plan to address this during enrollment next year and registration with one-on-one meetings with families, attendance contracts, early intervention, and targeting students who don't necessarily fall in the chronic absenteeism, so they often fall through cracks early in the year, and it gets a bit out of control as the year goes along. We're also going to increase our spotlight on celebrating high and improved attendance rates on students. That was the last of our data slides, so we are opening it up for questions that you might have.
Well, thank you for your presentation. And I think what we're going to go ahead and do is just go down the line. That way we make sure we don't miss any board members. So Dr. Wright, do you have any questions or comments?
I do not at this time. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Judge Mays.
Thank you, President Voss. As you know, I've been a little bit critical about what's been going on with MGT, but I need to say, particularly in light of this unusual set of circumstances we've had, that I'm really feeling some hope in what's going on here. I know Ms. Beatty, initially when I started reading those graphs, I had to kind of refocus because up didn't necessarily mean good and down didn't necessarily mean bad, you know. So, but I'm seeing that there were some significant changes and some significant advancements, and it's unfortunate that we got cut off with the face-to-face contact with these students. But I'm really hopeful that now that we have this first year behind us, that assuming Governor Polis allows us to go back to school in the fall, that you folks will be on the ground with your feet on the ground and ready to roll right away. And I'm really encouraged that we're going to see some significant progress. And so while I can be tough on you at sometimes, I also want to let you know that I was really rather pleased with what I've seen in this short period of time. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Judge. I will say that the leaders at Risley and the teachers said that was probably their greatest disappointment, was not taking CMAS this year. For that very reason, they really felt like they were going to see extremely high growth out of their students. But thank you very much.
Mr. Farrell.
Thank you, President Voss. Thank you, MGT, for your presentation this evening. There were a couple points throughout it where you acknowledged that your goals weren't met. So my question is, do you think that those goals were too ambitious to begin with, or what lessons can you take from this year and not meeting some of those to apply going forward?
Yeah, no, that's a really valid question. I think at MGT and in all my school career, we set ambitious goals. Say, if we don't set ambitious goals, our students have no shot, and they have such the gaps are so big. I don't want to set goals that we know we're going to achieve. I would rather miss it by a few points and have set an ambitious goal than to have made a goal that would not significantly show results for children. So I'm going to first say that. Secondly, though, you're right. Some other factors into it, as I talked about, are very young staff. You know, many of them first-year teachers. They were getting their feet under them. They were just getting ready to show what they could do. And I'm excited that to this point, I don't think any of our young teachers have said they're leaving. They have all indicated that they're staying, except for teachers that we didn't feel like this was maybe the best setting for them. We aren't losing any teachers that we knew we needed to keep, even our young ones. So getting our teachers with more experience, relationships with kids, some of those systems, the infrastructure systems that I talked about that were difficult early on. We didn't hit the ground running in the way that I know you wish we would have, or that Dr. Bull and I wish we would have, but we were, so I would say hitting the ground running next year is even going to make more of a difference.
Thank you. And I appreciate ambitious goals as well. And I hope that we can hit them as we move forward.
Thank you.
Ms. Clementi.
Thank you, President Voss, and thank you, MGT, for your report. And I echo both Mr. Farrell's and Judge Mays's comments, and have simply a couple more. I wonder if first you have determined who will be the on-the-ground executive coach in the building next year.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, I mean, that is another really great question. And Dr. Bull is going to address that in his section of this.
Okay.
So will that be okay to kind of put that one on hold till he delivers his portion?
Certainly.
Certainly. And if it's helpful, I can jump in and tell you that tomorrow morning, Ms. Maury and I are engaging in conversations specifically around the model for next year. And I think that the outcome of that, what I'm anticipating as an outcome, is going to move us to be able to not only identify the model of service for next year, but also then answer that question specifically about who or how the model shapes with an organization that will be providing that level of support, the boots on the ground, as you're asking about.
Okay, thank you. So that says to me that we're still in negotiations about what next year's going to look like.
We are engaging in that tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. Yes, we are.
All right. Then my last couple questions, and I apologize if they're in the wrong spot here in the report. I'd like to know how involved MGT has been in these last 6 weeks with the figuring out distance learning and remote learning and getting devices to people and checking with families and kids to know who we're reaching and who doesn't have access and those kinds of things.
Yeah, so I will say I've been at my stay-at-home orders too, but I, especially early on, I was online in video conferences in Google Forms with the leadership team and the teachers nearly every day. And, you know, there was a time that they weren't even opening schools back up to deliver devices, but they created, you know, so they have documents at the school where they have contacted every family. The last time I talked to them, they were down to like 2 families in the entire school that no one had been able to contact. And so the number of check-ins and that they have done with their families and the systems that we set up for how are you going to cross-reference that? You know, who are our students at risk for some of our threat assessments, our suicide assessment, or we just know maybe being at home for most kids is the safest place they can be, and for some of our children it's not. And so we scripted what the counselor check-in that would happen every week. We had that looked over by the head of your counseling department, who said it was very good. The only thing she added was that she wanted them to include a safe to tell so if they didn't feel safe. So we put the students in categories like that as well. Contact, make sure they have devices. Who are we most concerned about? What, and then my PLC meetings and lesson planning meetings have been, what's the quality of what we are putting out there? How many kids are you getting? Because we find that some hours they were getting 10, 12 kids, which still isn't very high. But when you hear other hours, they were getting like 6 kids participating. I said, okay, what are we going to do about that? How, so they had a system where they broke it down by grade level so they wouldn't have multiple teachers, the science, social studies, math, language arts teacher calling, but one, like who's in my homeroom? And I'm going to call and say, what can we do? Not to put people on defensive. We don't know what's going on in their lives and why they haven't been participating, but to say, how can we help? How can we support? So very involved in those sort of conversations about distance learning and getting our students involved, making sure our students feel connected. The other way I've been really spending my time most recently, though, is hiring for next year. We hired a new principal. Just Monday, we had our assistant principal interviews. I've sat in, delighted with the young principal chosen. I think she's going to be great for Risley, just what they need. And I've been with her on every single teacher interview and TFA interview. So I've been involved both with what I call 2021 work and then making sure that this year's work is going off and as high quality as it can be, including helping the present principal, Dawn, rethink what her agendas for ILT meetings and agendas for PLC meetings should look like. So our revised reports will actually show how that's changed because of the current circumstances.
Great, thank you. My last question probably will go to Mr. Bull, and he can answer it as he's giving his presentation or afterwards or not. And that is simply, how are you beginning to think about closing the summer gap that we're all expecting to see in the fall? So as we think about next year and next year's model, what's the plan to address the kind of catch up that we all expect?
Well, I think that's going to be part of the conversation, and I'm not trying to dodge your question, I promise. That's got to be a part of our conversation going forward as we talk about considerations to reshape a model and engage in then when does that model start to be implemented and what does that look like. I will tell you, and I'm opening up a can here. I probably shouldn't, but part of my downfall, I think, is I'm sometimes just brutally honest. One of the challenges that has existed, I think, is this concept of full management of a school inside of a school district. And if there's ever a need to evidence that, I would suggest strongly that COVID-19 has truly illustrated some of the challenges there. And so as we talk about the work in the summertime, we're still going to be engaging in that work with teachers who are Pueblo 60 teachers and teachers at Risley. And my opinion, and I need to talk with Ms. Morey and Superintendent Macaluso on this, but it's going to be important for Risley to align with the support of MGT in that work in the summertime, so that there's consistency again of the support that that the district can provide to all of the schools.
You know, and I just add on just a little bit to that is I would say one key is going to be early assessment. Next year, we need to know how big the gaps are from where they should be to where they are. And I think that while a plan does need to be in place, we also need the data to say, where are our kids currently? And we can't lower our expectations for the end of the year goals. So it will be about helping our teachers learn how to accelerate student achievement. And there are some really good acceleration models. And that's what we'll probably be spending a lot of time with, especially in that first, if we want to call it a trimester or first quarter, would be some acceleration models of instruction.
Great, thank you.
Well, thank you both for your presentation and for all of your hard work. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Yep. And good luck to you with the rest of this year.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye now.
And with that, we'll be moving to the D60 preschool program report.
Thank you, President Voss. At this time, I'd like to introduce you to Ms. Carrie Palumbo, who serves as Executive Director of Elementary Education. Hello, Mrs. Palumbo. She's going to give us an update and a report regarding our preschool program.
Well, good evening, President Voss, Superintendent Macaluso, and the board. Tonight, I'll be sharing with you the 2019-20 preschool enrollment report. The Colorado Department of Education granted Pueblo District 60 1,445 slots for the 2019-20 school year. Slots refer to per pupil revenue, or PPR, at a 0.5 rate, meaning that each slot is equivalent to half a day program for one child. Here's where preschool funding gets a little confusing. Districts have the ability to stack some of our slots to create full-time programs for some children. So in essence, it takes 2 slots for one child to access a full-day program. Let's take a closer look at how Colorado preschools are funded. The funding for the slots that I mentioned come from 2 sources. First of all, CPP, or the Colorado Preschool Program, in which we're restricted to stacking 5% of CPP slots statewide. 1,139 of our district slots came from this source, so the majority of them. The other source is eCare, or Early Childhood at-Risk Enhancement Funds. This source of funding is more flexible and 100% stackable, meaning that 2 half-day slots can be used to create 1 full-day program for one child. D60 received 58 eCare slots, in addition to the 248 slots which were previously utilized in kindergarten. Those 248 slots were reverted back to pre-K with a push for full-day kindergarten at the state level this year. So as you can see, not all of our slots can be stacked to provide full-day opportunities for children. So we provide numerous options in our district. We have a variety of options for parents to suit the needs of our youngest students. Half-day and full-day programs for both 3- and 4-year-olds. This is the first year that we've offered 3-day, full-day preschool for our 3-year-olds. Preschool program exists at most of our elementary schools as space allows. We have the ability to serve 16 children in each classroom, whether it be half or full day, with the exception of classrooms who have students enrolled who receive special education services. And then the per pupil ratio is lowered to 14:1. In addition to the preschool programs that exist in our district buildings, We also contract with 3 community childcare centers in order to expand preschool options for Pueblo families. And those are East Side Childcare Center, Southside Children's Center, and Northmore Preschool. Of the 1,445 slots which were granted, 1,228 of these slots were used, representing 832 students from around our city. Of those 832 children, nearly 50% were in full-day programs this year. Slots that are not used by districts are returned to the state so that they may be redistributed to districts which have the need for additional slots. 217 slots were returned to the state this particular school year. As you saw in the last slide, we were unable to use 100% of the slots that were awarded to us. And although we offer a variety of options across the city, some families have needs that we were unable to fully meet. Should be noted that not all families who apply for preschool qualify for the program, and I'll go over that a little bit later. In addition, you saw earlier in the presentation that not all CPP slots are stackable to create full-day programs, and some working families are unable to make this work with their particular schedule. Often families will request a specific school that they'd like their child to attend for various reasons. And while the staff attempts to be as accommodating as possible, families sometimes choose to sit on a waiting list instead of taking their child to a site that's inconvenient or possibly prohibitive due to transportation. Consideration for parents is the desire to obtain wraparound services such as before and after school childcare. The 3 community partners I spoke of earlier help to fill some of this need, but organizations such as Head Start are also a good fit for families with extended working hours and lack of family assistance where childcare is concerned. I also want to remind the board that we were granted 248 slots for preschool this year that were previously being used to fund full-day kindergarten. So we were given 248 additional slots for preschool than we had gotten in the past year. In order to keep all of this in perspective, I want to direct your attention to the information on the next slide. And this is what I would consider a celebration. As you can see, District 60 utilized more of the state allocated slots this year than in past years, even though we were a district in declining enrollment. This is due in most part to a concerted enrollment blitz. You may have noticed last year that there were banners hung around the city at busy intersections. The preschool staff also produced a wonderful video with our communications team touting the benefits of preschool programs. Social media announcements were prevalent throughout the spring and summer of 2019. Staff also held school enrollments on site, and there were ongoing summer enrollments at Paragon as well as other sites. This effort truly paid off in terms of parent awareness and ultimately in the number of students who were able to, that we were able to find who qualified for our preschool programs. As I stated earlier, all children must qualify for preschool program by meeting one or more of the legislated significant family risk factors that you see on this slide. 3-year-olds must have 3 or more risk factors in order to qualify, and 4-year-olds must have at least 1 risk factor. Preschool staff have been trained and are diligent about making time with families to help them qualify. Each family is personally interviewed for eligibility. And that concludes my report on the enrollment of preschool this year. Are there any questions?
And again, I think I'll just go down the line. That way we make sure we don't miss anybody that has questions. Dr. Wright?
I do not at this time. She answered my question.
Thank you.
Judge May?
Great report. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Farrell?
No questions. Thank you, Mrs. Palumbo.
Of course.
And Ms. Clementi?
No questions. Thank you and congratulations on the use of those so many more slots. That's great. And good luck going forward. So hoping we can maintain that and maybe even grow it a little bit. Thank you.
You are very welcome. Thank you.
Ms. Palumbo, thank you for educating us. I requested this report, and I appreciate learning more and just being more knowledgeable as I was going around the schools and touring. That was something that they always pointed out and we're very proud of. So I definitely appreciate being able to learn more. Can you explain to me again the full day slots? I know there's a desire in the community to have more of those. And can you remind me again what the reason is why we don't have more full day slots?
Yes, we have, with our two different sources of funding, CPP slots are only stackable up to 5% statewide. We can always ask the state for more slots to be stacked, which we have in the past if there are in excess, but truly they only allow 5% to be stacked. Now, the other type of funding, e-care funding, can be fully stacked. So you have two different types. We can stack e-care on top of CPP to create full day funding, but we only, as I mentioned earlier, only have so much of the e-care funding that we receive. And so once those are stacked, we're relegated to the 5% of CPP funds, and the rest of them are half-day programs. I should mention, President Voss, that there are actually sites that that like to have the half-day programs in their schools because it does expose more students. Baca is one really good example that comes to mind right now. They have limited space in their school. It's very small. And so they tend to like to have a AM program and a PM program. So more students are exposed to Baca and would choose to go there. It helps their enrollment that way. We also have a lot of our parents that request a half-day option. Some of our parents that signed up for full-day 3-year-old program this year discovered that it might not be the best fit for their child at this time. They just needed maybe another year of growth and maturation to be able to handle a full day. So those are some of the reasons right there. You know, it's our inability to stack all of the funding that we get to create full day programs, and then just trying to get more slots open for more students in our city.
And is there any other funding sources outside of eCare and CPP that we can access, or are those the only two?
There is CCAP funding that is available, but it doesn't impact a great number of our students. CCAP funding is really more for parents who are going back to school and that type of thing. The reason that we're not able to use a lot of that funding is because of the fact that we have so many grandparents that are providers to, you know, childcare providers to our children, and they would not qualify in that category.
Okay, thank you. And you talked about the need for wraparound services as well. Can you talk more about what services we currently offer to families?
So I did mention the 3 organizations that we partner with. We do have some families that, for whatever reason, they work long hours, they need before or after school care. And if you're aware of our contract with our preschool providers, we have certain hours that our staff is contracted for. And so these locations help us to fill that need. Parents do pay for those services, sometimes at a reduced rate. A lot of times it's based on their income. So.
Got it. And I think my last question here, you talked about the qualifications that kids need to meet to be able to access the program. If they meet those qualifications, then do they not get into the program? They can't be in preschool?
That's true. And I would say this, I would say that Mrs. Bermudez and her staff is very good at asking the right questions. to help qualify kids. They will go down every avenue and will talk to parents, trying to get them qualified in some area. But you are correct. There are some students that just simply do not qualify based on those 10 different qualifications.
Now, do we have
very few?
Yeah. Do we have any opportunities to allow them to participate in our program outside of qualifying for those specific qualifications? Is there any opportunity outside of that?
Not that I'm aware of. I can do some more research on that and see if there are other ways. But as far as I am aware, they have to meet 3-year-olds 3 of those qualifying factors and 4-year-olds at least 1. So as you can see, it's really a lot easier to qualify a 4-year-old. And some of those factors are pretty broad and general. And like I said, we really do qualify the major amount of students that we possibly can. So it's very few parents that would be seeking preschool elsewhere that can qualify.
Got it. Well, thank you, Ms. Palumbo. I really appreciate all the great information.
Sure.
And if there aren't any other questions, sorry, Superintendent Macaluso.
No, I was just going to move us along to the next report, if you're ready.
Sure.
So thank you, Ms. Palumbo, for your report. We're going to move on to the next report. I'd like to introduce you to Assistant Superintendent Maury, and she's going to give us an update regarding the school closure under COVID and the work that we've been doing around that.
Thank you so much. President Voss, Superintendent Macaluso, members of the board. Today, our team wants to give you an update on the COVID-19 school closure. I will start the report with a couple of topics, and then I'll turn it over to some other members of the team, and then I will bring it to a close at the end. So the first thing that I wanted to share with you are some grading for the second semester recommendations that we have or are just sharing now with our teachers. So I'm going to share my screen. We're going to start with elementary. So it's really important to understand the rationale and the philosophy behind why we even feel that we want to look at our second semester, especially that last quarter, differently. So I do want to read this philosophy. So during these unprecedented times of school closure, amidst the global health pandemic of COVID-19, it's necessary to provide guidance regarding the alternative grading process. Although the emergency distance learning plan provides an opportunity for learning, we acknowledge it does not and it cannot replace the quality instruction that occurs during in-person instruction at the school setting. This grading process aligns with a do no harm philosophy as our students and our staff navigate these challenging times. So our goal is that students will benefit and be awarded for their efforts in completing fourth quarter assignments and tasks. We also seek to not harm students for work that they're unable to complete. So therefore, we've adopted a grading practice that acknowledges the difficulty of this situation while still recognizing students for all of their efforts at continued learning. So on the elementary report card, there are 2 different scores or grades. The first one is a proficiency grade, and that is given to all students K-5. And we are going to give a proficiency grade this last quarter of an NA. The rationale is not to think that students haven't learned. They have learned, but we don't have the capacity to assess the proficiency at this time. So we are going to give an NA for proficiency. Students in grades 3-5 do get letter grades, an overall letter grade. And so students will receive an overall letter grade of a pass if there is any evidence at all that they participated in online distance learning or within the curriculum packet. Or A student will receive an NA if there's no evidence at all of any participation in online distance learning or the curriculum packet. So I'm wondering if if there's any questions about the elementary before I move forward to the middle and the high school. They're all slightly different.
I have one question, if I may. What really, down to basics, is the difference between the pass and the NA for those 3rd to 5th graders? Will that have a significant impact on anything?
Not really, not at the elementary level. It's just a recognition that there was some participation and there's evidence of that. And so we thought, well, it's not NA. We want to just give a pass rather than a ABC grade.
Understood. Thank you.
I have a question. First of all, I want to thank you again for what you're doing, because as we look at how to serve the students, I know it is a challenge. So the last time we talked, I was asking about maybe the students we have not reached. So is there any evidence now of some that we've not reached yet, or have they all had either curriculum packets or the virtual access?
That's a great question. Later in the presentation, Ted Johnson is actually going to share information, I think, that will answer that question. Any other questions? Okay. I just want to make sure, can you all still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Keep moving. You're doing fine.
Terrific. Okay, the middle school grading has the same introduction, same philosophy, and then specifically, students in grade 6-8 will receive their 3rd quarter grade or the end of 2nd semester grade, whichever is higher. So in other words, any student who was able to raise their grade will receive that higher score, but it will not be lower than the 3rd quarter. In this way, we don't harm students who perhaps were unable to participate or who struggled with the online without direct instruction every day and feedback directly from their teacher every day or something like that. Questions about the middle school grading? Okay. High school, again, same introduction, same philosophy, do no harm philosophy. So all high school credited courses, including those with weighted grades, similarly to the middle school, students in grades 9-12 will receive their 3rd quarter grade or the end of the 2nd semester grade, whichever is higher. Additionally, because we award credit and it's critical to graduation for the high school students, if a student failed a course for the semester, they will receive a quarter credit, a quarter high school credit for the 4th quarter. Again, in this way, we don't harm a student if there was a particular reason why they couldn't participate or why they had difficulty in raising a grade, that sort of thing. They will get the credit. All dually credited courses, these are courses that earn both high school and college credit. So any dually credited courses, whether taught at the high school or taught on the CSUP or PCC campuses, so STS, concurrent enrollment, CTE, those types of courses, students will receive the grade earned at the end of the 2nd semester. Any student who failed a course will receive high school 1 quarter credit just for that last 4th quarter, high school quarter credit, and the college credit would be determined by the college. APEX is the main program that we use for online courses. You can't really fail an APEX course. You either complete it with some sort of a grade, or you have to retake quizzes and tests and everything until you pass it. So you can't get an F in an APEX course. So what we want to do is any incomplete courses, we will not end date them. We'll allow students to continue to work on those courses into the summer or even into next year. And lastly, CDLS is another online program that we use for just literally a handful of students, and we will handle the grading of those on a case-by-case basis. So any questions about our high school grading recommendations?
This is Barb. No questions, but thank you. I know it took a lot of work and thought and discussion and input to come to those policies, and I appreciate the work that must have gone into that. Thank you.
Thank you. We spent a lot of time and we were very, very thoughtful, particularly around the philosophy and the rationale of trying to make sense of why it does need to look different this fourth quarter. Any other questions? Okay. Then the next topic I wanted to share with you has to do with our plans for June and July professional development. So as you know, we typically offer in person, of course, typically professional development in June. We've made a decision not to offer any kind of virtual professional development or in-person professional development this June. We will share with teachers, however, some options they have for taking some CDE online courses that would count for advancement credit. It would not count for college credit, but they would still get the advancement credit. So we'll share some ideas for some things that they might want to do in June. Additionally, just so that you know, we're forward thinking about August in terms of new teacher orientation and in terms of the professional district professional development that we deliver in August to all of our teachers. And we are already starting to plan that any of those topics would be either virtual or online, or the option of virtual online if that's what we need to do. There will be some things that could, if we're in person, we could deliver in person, but we will make sure we have a virtual option. We've also thought strategically about what would be some of the content that we would offer that might be different given that situation. So for example, we're talking about offering some professional development that really focuses on distance learning and effectively using online practices to deliver high quality instruction and some things like that. So we're really thinking about and keeping it really flexible moving into the opening of next school year, depending on where we're at. So now I'd like to turn it over to Jill Kidd for an update.
Thank you, Suzanne. Nutrition Services continues to offer emergency grab-and-go meals on Tuesdays and Fridays. So we're serving 5 breakfasts and 5 lunches each week. We serve about 2,500 students each week, or each day we serve. And to date, we've served 127,224 meals. We have a partnership with Care and Share Food Bank, and we distributed 2,000 food bags over the last couple of weeks, a total of 22,000 pounds of food that went to families. We also distributed bags from the Pueblo Food Project that was donated by local food producers. And we are also beginning to work on planning for the fall so that we can be ready with any, I guess, version of school lunch or breakfast that we need to have to be able to adapt to the COVID prevention guidelines that are in place when school starts again. We've been looking at the cost or the loss of revenue that the nutrition service budget will see an impact from with our loss of serving in March, April, and May. And we're predicting that our loss of revenue is going to be about $2.6 million. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Mr. Johnson?
Good evening, Superintendent Macaluso, President Voss, and members of the board. It's my pleasure tonight to share with you some of the data regarding the delivery of our distance learning plan. Since this closure of schools in March, our district team, our school leaders, and our teachers have really been working to ensure that students in District 60 have opportunities to learn via this plan. School leaders and their teams have conducted a large outreach effort to contact families regarding their kind of ability to access online learning, or at the elementary level, if they have an inability to do that, their need for curricular materials. We've checked in with our principals. The majority of them are reporting that they were able to directly contact at least 90% of the families in their school. So someone on their school team had a conversation with a parent. When that wasn't possible, they've left messages, they made repeated calls, and they're continuing to reach out to families in an effort to address any issues and challenges that may have arisen for them. So based on these contacts, we were able to estimate that about 78% of the students at the elementary level have some type of access to online learning. However, in order to provide a learning opportunity for students that have limited or no access, we also distributed curriculum packets to the students. A couple of weeks ago, we had a team consisting of district personnel and volunteers. They spent several days at the warehouse and created more than 1,500 curriculum packets for students in grades K through 5. And at this point, more than 1,300 of those packets have been delivered to families via their schools. So we have gotten quite a few out of those, and we still get a few trickling in here and there. I have a garage full of some curricular packets, and people call me up, and I try to get them to those folks as quickly as I can. At the middle level, schools reported a similar number. About 78% of the students had some type of access to the online resources. To provide more of an opportunity for that access, the middle schools did distribute Chromebooks to identified families in grades 6 through 8. And approximately 200 Chromebooks have been distributed to students at the middle level. One of the great things about the Chromebook distribution is that if you have a family like many of us do with multiple siblings, it provides an opportunity for all those siblings to get some of that access as well. High school had a much higher number of students that reported some access to the online learning platform, with an average of over 93% of students with some type of access. Nevertheless, they also conducted a device distribution at the beginning of April, earlier on, and they delivered over 250 Chromebooks to students at the high school level. So we remain committed to providing those learning opportunities for students at all levels, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Ms. Palumbo has the next presentation.
Yes, it's appropriate that I am going to speak about enrollment issues since I talked about preschool enrollment earlier. I just want to let you know that we are well underway now with kindergarten enrollment online. This is the first time that we've ever been able to do such a thing, and because necessity is the mother of invention, I want to give big kudos to Bruce Richards and his staff for all of their really great work in allowing us to be able to do this. So at this point in time, parents can go on our district website to the enrollment pull-down window, and they'll be given the option to fill in an online registration for their kindergarten child. And then they can also upload those important documents that we require for them to register their child, such as birth certificate and immunization documents. And again, this is the first time that we have ever done anything like this. And because Necessity is the mother of invention. We are also now working on a way for this to occur with our preschool students as well. I would hate for our amazing numbers that we had last year to go down. And so Bruce and his team are working very closely with our preschool department as well as myself to create a system where our parents will be able to also enroll online. And that should be up and running within the next 2 weeks. So I believe our kindergarten was online as of last Tuesday. So our parents already have the ability to go ahead and enroll their kindergarten students.
Great, thank you. Mr. Macias?
Thank you, Ms. Maury. Good evening, everyone, again. As you may or may not know, on April 21st, CHASA canceled the spring sports and activity season. The CHASA was hoping to resume play on April 27th, but with the governor's safe-at-home order, it was getting too late to salvage the season. The CHASA and all its members are now planning on how we are going to conduct summer practices and camps and how the fall sports season may look like. Contingent on recommendations and guidelines set forth by our local health departments will determine summer practices and fall sports. For example, one Colorado school district is now not allowing any type of practices or camps on their facilities until August 1st. So that would put that school district behind a little bit if everyone else is looking at July 1st. So we're trying all to be on the same page and start at the same time. And if the CHASA decides to delay the fall season 2 or 3 weeks, then that will be the case. Again, we will find out when our local health departments will allow us on those fields. The South Central League and our high school district ADs, we have been meeting on a weekly basis, going over topics like how are we going to letter these kids, refunds, and thanks to David Horner and Lana in the accounting office, we refunded all our students who paid their participation fees this spring. So big kudos to the accounting department for doing that for us. I would like to close by giving a big shout out to Dalton and Donnie Roybal for assisting me with the hashtag Be the Light Colorado video. That was filmed at Dutch Clark Stadium with the stadium lights on. And the video was aired on Friday, April 10th, and on our social media sites, and the next week on the CHASA Now site. It was not only a tribute to our seniors, our graduating seniors, and also all our sports kids this spring, but to all the medical personnel and all our hardworking people on the front line, and to all those who were affected by COVID-19. So it was nice to see that hashtag D60 proud. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Macias. So the final topic I want to share with you has to do with our exciting plans for honoring our senior class of 2020 with a virtual graduation. I want to start by recognizing all of our students, but especially our seniors, because due to the health restrictions and the risks posed by COVID-19, the spring of their senior year was not what they had envisioned. And there is a real genuine sense of loss. And I want to acknowledge that. It's important to acknowledge that. The decision to hold a virtual graduation was made to ensure the safety and health of all of our graduates and their families. And believe me, our superintendent did not take that decision lightly. We also don't want to run the risk of even one graduate not being able to attend if we delay an in-person graduation to some later undetermined date. Pueblo D60 graduations are an incredible milestone in our students' lives, and I want everyone to know that our principals, our communication department, our district staff, they are literally working day and night to make these really special. So now I get to share with you the tremendous work and planning that is going into honoring and recognizing the distinguished class of 2020. We have some awesome plans for these virtual graduations. I say graduations because we're in the process of pre-recording 5 separate graduations, one for each of our 5 high schools. And we know that every component of our traditional graduation is special. So we're working to produce a high quality, authentic program that features all of the same traditional elements that our graduations have always included in the past. So for example, starting this week, every one of our students who would have presented a speech during a traditional ceremony is being professionally recorded using a teleprompter. So our valedictorian, our salutatorians, our senior class presidents, ROTC representatives, and our principals, all of their speeches, they'll be part of the pre-recorded graduation video. We're going to recognize each of our gold and silver cord graduates, and we're actually going to incorporate the academic excellence ceremony right into the graduation video. So we'll award the 4 pillar recipients, service, character, academic excellence, and leadership to those individuals, as well as the lamp of knowledge to the school winner. We'll also acknowledge those students who received their associate's degree in addition to their high school diploma. We've invited each high school, and this is pretty cool, to submit a school-specific musical performance, either one that was pre-recorded, or in some cases, schools are getting very creative and they're trying to record virtual performances using technology. So we're all really excited to see how that's going to turn out. Members of the board, you will still accept the class of 2020 within each of our graduation online ceremonies. And perhaps most importantly, Superintendent Macaluso met virtually with about 22 of our high school seniors from across our schools. And they shared that the single most important thing to them was to be able to walk the stage to accept their diploma. So we're working with the health department to come up with a safe plan to record each of our graduates in their cap and gown, walking across the stage to receive their well-earned diploma. So rest assured, in order to keep social distancing, we're taking every precaution to schedule this in groups of 10, with each school filmed on a different day, etc. You can imagine how many hours of time it's taking to plan and produce these productions. It really is an amazing undertaking. And I really cannot say enough about the dedication of our team to pull this off in such a short time. Each graduation video will be premiered on our district Vimeo page. It will be linked to our social media accounts, and it will be played on our Comcast Channel 18 at the originally scheduled date and time. And then we'll continue to play the graduations on Channel 18 through the month and maybe into the summer. Not only that, the virtual graduations will also be archived. So friends and family will be able to go back and watch them over and over whenever they like. So that's our plan. I don't know if you have any questions about it or a discussion that you'd like to have. But happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Well, I think what we're going to go ahead and do is, again, just go down the line, make sure everybody has their opportunity to ask questions, make comments. So we will start off with Dr. Wright.
First of all, I want to thank you again for your hard work. And I shared earlier my desire to see it in person, and I understand that that's something that may or may not happen, but I share that. But I had some questions about the presentation. So would you prefer I let everyone address the graduation issue first and then come back? How would you prefer, Assistant Superintendent Murray?
I'll leave that up to President Voss, whatever makes sense to you.
Yeah, I think let's go ahead, and if anybody has any questions, let's go ahead and do that. Get questions asked now, and then we can go back around, and if anybody has comments regarding graduation, we can do that the second time around.
Okay, first of all, again, especially when you read accounts from teachers and look at research and look at everything else you see, this is very difficult. And I think I want to thank you so much for the 1,500 curriculum packets. And I know that was not easy. And I hear that you distributed 1,300 of those. And I see that you still was able to get to some high school and middle school students the Chromebooks as well. The question I had was about the packets. It's just a process question. So when, one of the questions I have, so when the students finish the curriculum packet, how do they get it back to you?
That's a great question. At some point later in the school year, assuming we are allowed to do so in terms of the state directed order, we want to arrange a time for students to be able to get back into the schools, to be able to collect their belongings and so forth. At that point, we have an assignment sheet that went along with the curriculum packet that asked for parent signatures when assignments were completed. And they will turn that in, and then we'll get that information to the teachers so that they're aware that students have completed the assignments, which
Okay,
completed. Yep.
Thank you. The second question was about the special education students. Although it was data kind of like all of them lumped together, my concern was like what % of the students with disabilities are submitting classroom work, and how is that being addressed? And along the same lines, if there are difficulties with the technology, understanding, like this is a big learning curve for all of us. So I know some parents are like, oh my Lord, what do I do with this? Have you had any parents reach out to you to say, I don't know how to do the technology piece, and then what have we done to help them? I appreciate your answer.
Sure. Let me address the technology piece first. So yes, absolutely. Parents and students have had some struggles occasionally with technology or questions. And typically what they'll do is they will email their teacher directly or the principal for assistance. There also is a help number that they can call as well. So we've been able to respond to all of those questions to assist them. And then the first question, I believe, had to do with special education. We do have a well-articulated plan to support our special education students to make sure that their accommodations are in place, and to make sure that that there is a weekly contact made, typically with the parents, to ensure they're not having any difficulties, and if they are, to assist them with that. In terms of the percentage of special education students who are participating, that would be data that we would have to break down. We have not broken the data down, as far as I'm aware, Mr. Johnson, by demographics at all, have we?
No, we have not. That's been those are just general data numbers that we've been able to pull from the contact logs and the trackers.
That's something that we could do. And I know that each of our special education teachers are very aware of their caseload, student by student, their participation, and have contacted them. So that's something we could put together if that would be helpful. Dr. Wright, is that something that you'd like us to follow up on? It looks like Dr. Wright might be frozen. Dr. Wright, you may want to just log off and log back on, perhaps. Are there any other questions? Or President Voss, back to you.
Judge Mays, do you have any questions?
I do not, but as I understand the protocol, you're going to come back again on remarks.
Correct.
Ms. Morey, thank you for all the wonderful work that you folks have done and the amount of time that you and your team have put into obviously a situation that had to be developed from the ground up. So appreciate it very much.
Mr. Farrell, any questions?
I want to thank every department who's had to be creative in an unprecedented time and come up with new solutions. I did have just a question about participation in remote learning. We talk about access, but is there any data currently available on how many of those students who are participating online are actively participating, like they've signed in more than once and are doing things?
Mr. Farrell, that's a great question, and it's a very challenging one to answer for a number of reasons. One is that the learning we're doing, and this is a new word I learned today, is asynchronous, which basically means they're participating online, but they don't have to be in their seat on the computer at a certain time. So for some kids, they may be accessing that in the evening. For other students, it may be during the day, or when assembling's done using that. So we haven't had a lot of luck in terms of tracking a specific number of this is what participation looks like. What I can tell you is that our teachers have been, along with our school teams, reaching out. So I know a number of teachers have called when they've noticed maybe someone logging in and then they vanish for a few days. Last Friday, a lot of our teachers were actually calling and saying, hey, haven't seen this assignment. And it is actually kind of funny. In some cases, the parents are saying, well, the kids told me that they're doing this work. And then the assignments start coming in the next day in higher numbers. So we're continuing to try to monitor that. I don't think we've found a good way to get land on a number as far as what participation looks like. And then the same would certainly be true with the curriculum packs as well. You know, the students and the families are really running those, so hard to get at some of those numbers.
Well, thank you for that, and I appreciate the work our teachers are doing to follow up and hopefully keeping as many students engaged as possible. Thank you.
And Dr. Wright, sorry we lost you. We'll go back to you if you have any other questions.
Yeah, Dr. Wright, this is Superintendent Macaluso. I know that you had a question about the ESS numbers. We don't have that currently broken down right now. We just have general information in regard to you know, students that are accessing.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Clementi, any questions?
Thank you, President Voss, and thank you to all my colleagues for their terrific questions. In addition to those, I want to say, first of all, that I'm incredibly proud of our district and all that we've done to care for our kids in our community in these difficult, isn't nearly enough, strong enough an adjective to describe these times. I would like to ask a couple more questions. One, I appreciate Mrs. Kidd addressing the financial losses that the district is incurring throughout this difficult coronavirus time. And I wonder if there aren't more of those. I'm going to guess that athletics will have lost some money because of that, because of this spring sports canceling. And I imagine there are a lot of even school clubs and programs that will have lost financial support. And I wonder if there's a way sometime in the future to kind of get a handle on exactly what it's cost the district to be closed and to serve the community in this time. That just $2.6 million hit to the Nutrition Services Fund will be difficult to overcome. And in vain, I guess we'll be talking about the budget before too long. But I'd also like to ask Mrs. Morey what you're anticipating in terms of planning and structuring that the district's going to need to be doing for the fall to get started again, whether it be in a blended situation or whatever. But things I'm hearing are that the physical distancing will more than likely still be in place, and the large group prohibition will more than likely be in place, which means that if we open school, it sounds to me like we'll have to be doing it with staggered scheduling and some kind of provision for social distancing, all that kind of thing. And I'm wondering, Mrs. Maury, what kind of work that's going to take to be ready to open school in August or September.
So those are all questions on our mind at this time as well. And it's difficult to plan when you don't yet have the parameters in terms of the state-directed action. But it's certainly things that we've already, we have started to think about, but we do not have a plan yet. Those are all still questions for us to put together to come up with a plan.
So it seems reasonable to say that that's not something that you can pull together in a week or two. That's going to be a huge undertaking.
Yes.
Am I correct? And if we're going to open, even if it's after Labor Day, or even if we open in August with our normal calendar, it sounds to me like most of your summer is going to be taken up with planning this kind of activity, and for probably for all the eventualities, because it does sound like it's going to be a huge undertaking.
Board member.
Go ahead.
Board Member Clementi, thank you for the comments and for the questions. I'd like to just speak to that for just a little bit. I couldn't be more proud of my entire team and for the entire district team, all the support personnel, all of our teachers. Everybody has really gone the extra mile to be able to pull off a distance learning plan. So that was our first mode of operation in terms of launching that and continuing to ensure that that's going well, developing the grading practices and so forth. So that's still a very big, heavy lift that we're working on. The virtual graduation is another extensive, time-consuming, heavy lift, and all the while we are looking at what does next year look like and planning for that. Probably a week or two ago, when I sat in on the call with Dr. Anthis and with Governor Polis, I knew that when he did discuss that with the superintendents, I knew that was a strong possibility that starting the school year next year would look different. And so what are the impacts to our budget could be significant in terms of, what does the class size need to look like? How do we stagger schedules? How do we stagger lunchtime? If we start the school year in distance learning, which I think we're all praying that doesn't happen and we could start the school year in a traditional manner, but so much of it is unknown and so much of it is uncharted territory. So we're busy working with our entire team and putting those plans in place. You heard Assistant Superintendent Maury talk about even the professional development and how that needs to move to virtual and those sorts of things. So we are working on all those pieces, but we don't have a solidified plan yet.
And I appreciate that. I guess I'd like us all to recognize how many heavy lifts are all happening at the same time in the district. And so once again, I want to thank all of you and express my gratitude and appreciation for all that we are doing as a district to care for not just our kids, but for our community as well. And with that, all of those heavy lifts, all at the same time. So thank you.
And I just want to echo a lot of the comments that were already made by my colleagues. I just want to say thank you so much to our entire staff who has continued to go above and beyond, not only for our kids, but for kids in other districts and for the entire community. So we could not be more proud, and thank you so much for everything that you're doing. Ms. Mori and Superintendent Macaluso, the question I have is regarding graduation. The perception in the community is that we are the only district in the entire state looking at a virtual graduation. Can you give us some idea on how many other districts across the state are going to be doing the same thing?
Thank you for the question, President Voss. I think obviously all the districts are in the same boat. I think that we have many districts who are scrambling because they don't have a plan in place, and so they have various options, anywhere from let's meet and have individual time that you and your parents could come and pick up a diploma from your administrator, that sort of thing. I think the other thing is that there are many districts who don't have the capacity to pull off a very spectacular virtual graduation ceremony. So that also presents problems for districts. I think even PCC, I think today announced that they are going with a virtual graduation ceremony, I think May 22nd, if I'm not mistaken. I think there's just so many unknowns that districts are doing various things. I think there's lots of different proposals out there, but at the end of the day, they don't know if that could happen at all. So I think it's really up in the air in terms of the various proposals that they're entertaining.
Thank you for that. I reached out to the Colorado Association of School Boards to get their input. And just off the top of their head, they expressed to me that Denver is going to virtual graduation. So is Cherry Creek, Jeffco, and a few other districts in Colorado Springs. And they told me there was more also. So they expressed to me that we are far from alone, and that there are other districts that have decided to take the same action that we have. And with that, I want us to be able to go around again and give everyone the opportunity to express their comments on the graduation ceremony and have any kind of discussion. Dr. Wright?
I have no additional comments. Thank you.
Judge Mays?
Thank you, President Voss. When I ran for the school board, my campaign slogan was Kids First. My primary responsibilities included providing the best educational experience possible for every student in a safe and secure environment. That has not changed. As a school board member, I must be accountable to the entire community, but particularly to the students and the parents or caretakers who have placed their trust in D60. In exercising my responsibilities, it is necessary to explain the reason or reasons why I have voted on a particular issue. That is my intent at this time. Without question, the COVID-19 pandemic has presented circumstances that are unique, not just to Pueblo, but to the entire world. Decisions have to be made that invite controversy, but must nevertheless be made. The fact that an issue might be decided contrary to the beliefs of others does not mean that they were not listened to, but recognizes that reasonable people can agree to disagree and still respect differing opinions. Such is the issue whether the circumstances we face permit the time-honored tradition of in-person high school graduation. These are my observations and the reasons for my actions. I'm going to deliver them in real time, meaning I am going to be guided based on the facts as they exist today, as I, along with others, have no idea what the future portends as it relates to the pandemic. Over 57,000 people have died of the virus in the United States. Over 1 million people have contracted the virus in the United States. 9 people in Pueblo County have died of COVID-19, and at least 120 others have been diagnosed with the virus. In Colorado, there have been over 700 deaths and at least 14,000 others who have been diagnosed with the virus. While the vast majority of deaths have involved older adults older adults, children have not been spared. The suggestion that a small number of fatalities of children justifies putting the entire population at risk is insensitive and inconsiderate of those who have lost loved ones to COVID-19. As of today, Governor Polis has decreed the following until further notice. Vulnerable populations and older adults must stay at home except for emergency situations. We must continue the maintaining of social distancing at least 6 feet from others. There are no group gatherings over 10 people, and we're instructed to avoid having parties or get-togethers. As of today, Governor Polis has ordered that in-person K-12 school attendance is suspended for the remainder of the school year and will decide at a later date whether in-person school can resume in the fall and under what conditions it will resume. As a result of what we know today, it is my personal judgment holding an in-person graduation at this time places our students and their families in extreme danger and perhaps death. A situation that I will not and cannot validate. Therefore, I endorse a virtual graduation in lieu of postponing an in-person graduation for a later date. As of today, there are no assurances that Governor Polis will permit such a gathering and the projected date that it will happen. A virtual graduation at this time will permit every graduate who so wishes to participate in the celebration. That will not be the case if graduation is postponed to a future date. There are many reasons why a postponed graduation will preclude numerous students from participating in any type of graduation ceremony if a virtual graduation ceremony is not held. Some will join the military, others will have moved on to college or other pursuits. Some will have accepted employment which may prevent them from attending. And most importantly, and something that cannot be overlooked, is that some may not be able to attend because they will be placed in grave danger because of medical conditions which place them and their families at risk of contracting the virus. What we know for certain is that the virus will continue to be a danger until a vaccine is discovered, and that will not be happening soon. Some have just suggested that we hold a ceremony and replicate that which the Air Force Academy did over the weekend. Here was a protocol that was followed by the Air Force Academy for the graduation. All the cadets that were graduating, the seniors, were the only ones on campus. All other cadets have been removed from campus. All the cadets were there, were required to be restricted to base, one cadet to a room with social distancing in place for 6 weeks prior to graduation. Cadets were monitored continuously throughout that time, and any cadets showing symptoms or exposed were tested and were isolated outside of the cadet area. All participants and support personnel with access to the ceremony had temperatures taken. They were not immediately following the ceremony allowed to do anything, but they had to put their masks back on. The guests were limited to 10, including Vice President Pence. They were also tightly monitored and checked before they even entered the field of play, so to speak. So that is not a small undertaking when it comes to taking into consideration the safety and health and well-being of our students and our families and the caretakers that they have. And finally, the graduation of the Air Force Academy would have been prohibited by the state, but for the fact that it took place under the auspices of the federal government and on federal property. So any comparisons to the graduation ceremony of the cadets and what might happen with an in-person graduation here is just a monumental task to perform and does not have the support and the backing of the entire federal government. Each individual involved must be allowed to determine on a personal level the extent to which he or she wishes to integrate back into society. For many, medical issues will be the primary concern. All the experts have agreed that older adults and persons with pre-existing medical conditions or compromised immune systems are at a higher risk for severe illness from the virus, including those with asthma, diabetes, lung disease, heart disease, or high blood pressure. Those illnesses are very prevalent in our student population and certainly in our population as a whole. The decision is one that not only impacts graduates and their families, but those whose involvement is necessary to facilitate an in-person graduation ceremony. Anyone who would ordinarily be involved must be permitted to decide on a personal basis whether they wish to be involved, whether that's school personnel, support personnel, school board members, principals, whatever it is. That is a personal medical decision that should be left to the individual person. The pandemic has had a profound effect on each of us. And in the case of our graduates who have worked so hard, it has tarnished what would be a glorious day in their lives. While I reached this decision with a great deal of sadness, it is the appropriate decision in light of the reasons I have previously stated. One fatality of one student is too many. One fatality of one family member involved is too many. Now, with regard to the caravan that I found parading around my neighborhood this evening, let me give you folks that were involved in that action an initial preview of how my neighbors felt about that. They were unimpressed and they were upset that you would disrupt the peace and security of their neighborhood. Finally, in keeping with my position of calling things the way I see them and the way I believe them, I think those folks that were involved in doing what they did and upsetting a number of people, including my family, should probably enroll in, when school starts up again, in the introductory class to bullying, because that's exactly the type of behavior they were engaging in. Thank you.
Mr. Farrell.
Thank you, President Voss. If I'm recollecting correctly, when we made the decision to suspend in-person instruction and activities through the end of the school year, I used the term a heavy heart, and that was true. And I feel like it might even be a broken heart. I know that I can't feel the same way that our seniors are feeling right now. I'm not in their shoes. But I have read every email. I've read Facebook comments and posts. I've taken phone calls. I know that this is impacting people. I know that this virus is impacting people. And I don't think that it's fair to assume that this decision was made rashly or quickly or without consideration, because I've put a lot of consideration into it. I'm still putting a lot of consideration into it. I'm still running the gambit of emotions about this situation and what's happening and what's unfolding in front of us. I sound a little choked up because I did just get a text from a senior who told me that they know that there's a lot going on, a lot of discussion. But that senior's confident that our decision was the correct one to keep our community safe, to keep our families safe. So many generations of people have had challenges come before them. And this is definitely a challenge to our seniors right now. The situation is what you make out of it. And I hope that as many people can make this terrible situation the best that it can be. It's not a great situation. We acknowledge that. We know that. And I know that there's an effort to make a virtual graduation as meaningful as it can be. It's not the same as an in-person graduation. But being healthy, keeping our grandparents, our parents, our students, everyone in our community safe should be our #1 priority. Acknowledging our seniors is important. Doing it in a respectful way is important. And although emotions definitely are drawn to this situation, I hope that we can continue to move forward with a virtual graduation to protect our community, to protect our students, and to recognize and honor our seniors who have worked for years to reach this point. And they're not alone. There's seniors all over the country that are facing this situation. There's graduates from colleges who are getting their PhDs virtually. And I can't imagine what that feels like either. And it does break my heart. But when it comes down to it, I have to go with my heart. And my heart's telling me that this is the right decision. Thank you.
Ms. Clementi.
Thank you. I want to thank both Judge Mays and Mr. Farrell for their remarks, with which I concur wholeheartedly. None of us wanted this situation, and we have to acknowledge that, yeah, it's unfair. It is. That's the way it is, and there's not much that any of us can do about it. It's just as unfair to the Denver Public Schools student who lost her life to this virus just within the last month. We don't want to see that happen to any of our kids or any of their families, because the district made a decision based on pressure. None of our decisions are made rashly or as reaction. They're all very well considered, deeply thought out, very intentional, as was and continues to be this particular decision. We have one of the best videography departments in the state. And I'm actually kind of excited to see what all they're putting together for this graduation. This isn't a fly-by-night deal. And I should share with you that I know of a district in Denver, a large district in Denver, that's contracted with a Hollywood videographer to put together their virtual ceremony. We don't need people from Hollywood. We got people that are better. And while we're all disappointed that this is kind of the way things have to be, I agree that we need to make the best of what we got. I know that many districts who are, let me say that differently, those districts who are perhaps contemplating and hoping for ASB, that they run the very real risk of not having anything, because it's anticipated that large gatherings of any sort will not be permitted for quite some time now. as Judge said, one death from our decision is too many. And so I also support with a heavy heart the decision that we previously made. Thank you.
Well, first, let me say my heart is absolutely broken. And I want our kids and the community to know how incredibly tough this decision was. I never would have imagined I'd have to be making a decision like this. And it kills me that we're even in this situation. I want our kids and our community to know that their voices are being heard. I've read and responded to almost every email I've received. I've taken phone calls. I've also read the comments on social media, and I'm more than happy to talk with anyone on the phone. I spoke with the executive director of the health department today because I wanted to understand the level of risk that we'll be experiencing throughout the summer. He expressed to me that their data is showing that the cases in Pueblo County will continue to rise into the summer, and it's their opinion that having an in-person graduation would be risky. There's things we can do to mitigate some of that risk, such as having students wear masks and implementing social distancing, but it would still be risky. He ended by saying having an in-person graduation would be a concern to them from a public health standpoint. For me, what keeps me up at night is what if we change our minds and decide to have the in-person graduation and even just one of our kids catches the virus and, God forbid, passes away? I couldn't live with myself if I made a decision that caused that. I think we all understand the virtual graduation is not ideal or not what any of us truly want, but lives are at stake here. These are extraordinary circumstances, and I believe we have a tremendous responsibility as school board members to ensure the safety of our kids and our community. So it's with a heavy heart that the direction of this board is to proceed with the virtual graduation. We will move on now to the 2020-2021 budget update.
Thank you, President Voss. At this time, I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Dave Horner, who serves as our Chief Financial Officer. Mr. Horner.
Good evening. So in this special time, I'm trying to break this budget conversation down into some different components. One of the things that we're really looking at closely right now is tax collections for the balance of this fiscal year. As you know, the governor has extended out a time when people can pay their property taxes without penalties. We're very much dependent upon our tax collections that come in from the end of April through the end of June to continue to support our operation. We have about $32 million of local taxes that goes into our general fund calculation. And from here to the end of the year, we still need to collect about 20 million, which is normal. What we don't know is how much will be delayed. Will we have a lower collection rate? And so those pieces, we're really trying to monitor that. It really comes down to cash flow to be able to pay our bills for the balance of the year. Lana and I are really trying to watch it. We're talking with the county, trying to understand, you know, what are they seeing? The payment that came in last month was about where we expected it, but it's a fairly small payment. So we're looking for our bigger ones yet to come in. Another piece that we're real concerned about with all the forecasts, will the state do another rescission yet this year? Which is they do to us every now and then, like in January, sometimes we'll see a small rescission. Will it be a big rescission where they, you know, take back money and not give it to us? So we're really doing heavy monitoring, you know, for the balance of this year. On our bond side, we have enough cash in the bank to make the June payment, but depending on collections, our December payment next year could become a problem. And being it's our first year of our new bond, we don't have any surpluses in that account to cover it. It's about a $14 million payment. So we'll monitor that and keep you informed as that goes forward. Next piece, revenue forecasts. As I've attended every meeting, webinar, and anything that I can find from CDE, state legislature, CASB, our other business managers that are a little more connected than I am, we're all looking at revenue forecasts that could be down 5%, 10%. And today I even saw some documents out of Colorado Finance talking about 15% and 20% reductions. A 5% reduction for us is a little over $7 million, including the funds that come through us to go to our charters. They're talking about the budget stabilization factor could increase for the next 3 years. The one thing I saw is we could be down $3 billion in revenue this year and another 2 to 3 billion over the next 2 years after that. So multi-year effect out of this as they look back at the last recession. And so all we can do is kind of monitor and see how we can do that. Next piece would be enrollment forecasting for next year. Our normal cohort model that we use shows that we should be down about 350 students, and that is where we anticipated, 2.5 months ago of building the budget. I'm currently right now thinking I need to add another 100 to that, but I don't know if that should be, 500 or 1,000. I rub my crystal ball and can't find the spot that says pandemic on it. So I'm not really sure how to model that for us. They are saying we're going to have more at-risk students, more homeless, more kids that would be qualified for Title I, free and reduced. So the services needed for our kids is going to be increased. Next section would be, as I've listened to our other districts and things, one of the things that we are doing right now is we have a spending freeze on. Superintendent put on about the same time as we went out onto our distance learning plan, and we're only spending the bare minimum we need to continue to service our kids and our distance learning plan. This will help generate us some carryovers into next year as we look at it, so that it'll help us ride through a little more. I will present you a budget at either the next meeting or a special meeting or wherever, and we'll start having budgets cycled. This is the starting of our real cycle, so we have a version almost ready to give to you so we can have real conversations. We are seeing that the legislature is forecasting their next run from the JBC and everything will be on May 12th. They're hoping to have a long bill in the House on May 18th and in the Senate on May 25th and signed by the governor June 1. And then we need to have a budget done by the end of June. So some really tight timelines that we're looking at. I'm hearing conversations from my other business managers up and down the valley that are talking about they might actually do 3 budgets this year instead of 2, just trying to figure out how do things change as we move forward. We're all very concerned about the October count. Some people are asking the CDE, can we use last year's October count? And is that a possibility, which would be tremendous for some of us, but I don't know where the state would find the extra money to cover it. So a challenge. As we have the conversations with the other districts, we're seeing most of them are talking about a budget that's either starting at zero increase or starting at -5%. And the ones that are saying, well, I don't know if I want to go all the way to -5 to start with, but that's where I think the next second run of the budget will be. I'm looking at, we need to just start at a -5%, especially when I see the information this morning talking about could be -15 or 20% even. That's incredibly huge numbers for us. The other conversations they're having is freezes to wages, limited spending on textbooks, limited spending on maintenance, furlough days. If they have reserves, they're spending it down. We all know that Para's got an increase of a 0.5% on the district side and a 1.25 on the employee side. So those are all concerns as we look at budgets. And the conversations that we just had. What kind of delivery method are we going to have next year? Do we need more distance learning developed into our curriculum and things? There is, on a positive note, the federal CARES money, the runs that we're looking at right now, it looks like we should get about $4.3 million to Pueblo 60. But we don't know the true criteria of how we can spend it. There is going to be some restrictions. The documents that I'm starting to see thinks, there's quite a few things related to the pandemic that we can cover, but until we actually see the document, none of us really know for sure. So we will come back at the next meeting with a budget document. And it will be a balanced budget, and I'm shooting for close to our 9% ending fund at the end of next year. And then we'll keep working our way through as we learn new, improved information and what the legislature actually plans on giving us. So I'm open for any questions if you have any.
Dr. Wright, do you have any questions?
No, I do not at this time. I do acknowledge that it is very difficult. And so I like the idea of possibly even having 3 budgets, but we really won't know, like you say, until all of the facts are in. So, but thank you so much for informing us and keeping us up to date.
Good, Mason.
Mr. Horner, thank you. It seems like it was not too long ago that we were having great kumbaya parties and the whole bit, and then the pandemic hit us, and it's turned everything upside down. My question is this: are we going to proceed on schedule with everything that we've planned as far as the bond issue is concerned?
Yes, the bond funding is there, and that process is moving forward. The design teams are working. Bob and his team are continuing to put out the RFPs and everything. So I don't foresee any issues there. My only concern is the actual payment of the bond payment, in next December. And there's several options that I'm looking at as to make sure that we can take care of that. We will make the payment. It's just, do all the taxes come in when we expect them, or do we need to be creative in how we cover the payment? So the bond is going to continue on time.
Thank you.
Mr. Farrell?
I don't have any questions, but thank you to you, Mr. Horner, and your staff for trying to stay as up to date with how things are going to look when we have no idea how things are going to look. So I appreciate your effort, and regret that we have to look forward to a difficult budget process, but I appreciate you and your staff.
Thank you.
Ms. Clement?
Thank you. I apologize. I got kicked out of the meeting, so I may be duplicating questions or remarks. Again, thanks to you, Mr. Horner, and your staff for all that you're doing. The outlook outlook is not good at all. If we have a 9% reserve, can you tell me how many months of operating expenses would that cover?
That's about 1 month's operating expense.
Yeah. Okay. Not good. As I understand it, the CARES money as it comes in is all tied to Title I. Is that what you have heard?
What I've heard is they're using Title I as the mechanism to figure out how much to give each district, but it will not be exactly tied to Title I is what I'm hearing.
Oh, well, good. I'm hoping.
It's the mathematics right now of like 80% of Title I, and so how they spread it between the districts is what I'm understanding. And then there'll be its own set of rules.
Well, that's better, although it's still, I think it's going to have strings attached to it about how it can be used. And I do know that it is supplement, not supplant language. So that will also tie our hands a little bit. I just want to make us all aware that that K-12 in Colorado has still not recovered from the 2008 recession. And we're actually in worse shape than we were then. In 2008, there were state funds that could be rated, and those are no longer available. We're still at $500 million a year in the budget stabilization or negative factor. So we're starting this $500 million behind in K-12. And this year is going to be probably the best of the 2 or 3 next coming. And so I think it's pretty darn scary. And I hope that all of you will look at Ballot Initiative 271 as a little bit of mitigation and take the time to go look at fairtaxcolorado.org and what it can provide for our entire state and for K-12 as well. Again, thanks for all of your work. I'm hearing that we're going to be at probably a 10% hit at the state, and I'm hoping we can hold it to a 5% hit in our district budget. That is compounded by the things I mentioned earlier, which are the expenses that the district has had this year that we won't be able to backfill, like the $2 million to the Nutrition Services Fund. So I'll look forward to more conversation. I'm keeping my fingers crossed and all my toes as well, that things aren't going to be as dire as they look right now. Thanks, Mr. Voss.
Mr. Horner, thank you as always to you and your team for all of your hard work, especially in these challenging times. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll move on now to 10.0 policy. Superintendent Macaluso.
Thank you, President Voss. This item is on here just as an informational item for the board to make you aware that we did make some changes to the regulation, specifically the regulation BEDH, that allows us to change the format for public comment. So you received a firsthand account on how we changed that process. Essentially, we set up a voicemail box where we published that telephone number, and members of the community could call in and record a voice recording, and then Mr. Sprouse played that for you tonight. So again, this is on there just as an informational item to make the board aware that under Board Policy BG, School Board Policy Process, the superintendent has authorization to be able to make those changes within the regulation, since it's just a regulation. And so I did make those changes to ensure that we are able to conduct our virtual electronic meeting and still have access to the public comment. I don't know if Mr. Bump has anything additional to add in regard to that regulation?
This is Dick Bump, Mr. Voss, and members of the board and Superintendent Macaluso. I think it's a good solution to allow the public to continue to participate in our school board meetings. And so I guess we will endorse that for the board's consideration. The board, if it wanted to, could veto or modify it. But otherwise, if it's content with the changes, it can just recognize your information tonight and let it go.
Are there any questions from the board? Then we will move on to 11.0, the consent agenda. Are there any consent agenda items anyone would like polled to be voted on separately? Then I move that we approve the consent agenda items 2 through 10 as presented in tonight's board materials.
I second.
I'll call for the vote, please.
Ms. Clementi? Ms. Clementi?
If I'm not mistaken, I see that Barb has dropped off the call, so we should be expecting her in just another couple of seconds if she can get back on.
Thank you.
Ms. Clementi, we are voting on the consent agenda.
I'm sorry, I lost my connection again. Can you repeat that?
We are voting on the consent agenda.
Oh.
Your vote is up, Barb.
Ms. Clementi?
Ms. Clementi, could you repeat your vote? Looks like she's frozen now.
We'll wait a second again for her to come back on.
I'm ready to vote.
So board member Clementi has left the meeting. So let's see if we can get her reconnected.
May I ask a question, Mr. Bump? Are we permitted to proceed without Ms. Clementi being on this call at this time?
Yes, I think you could. You could consider that she has just left the meeting, which is basically what has happened, and proceed with the vote.
Okay, Jerry, can we proceed with the vote?
Yes. Mr. Farrell?
Aye.
Judge Mays?
Aye.
Mr. Voss?
Aye.
Dr. Wright?
Aye.
And we'll move now to 12.0, action items. Superintendent Macaluso.
Thank you, President Voss. At this time, I would bring to you for consideration the following leadership appointments. The first appointment I would ask you to approve is for Mr. Aaron Bravo, current principal at South High School, to serve as Executive Director of Intervention and Student Services, effective July 2nd, 2020. The next appointment would be for Miss Marcy Imes, current Director of Curriculum and Instructional Programming, to serve as Executive Director of Secondary Education and Career and Technical Education, effective July 1st, 2020. And finally, Lana Nehans, current Supervisor Budget Analyst, to serve as Director of Budget and Finance, effective May 1st, 2020.
I move that we approve the superintendent's recommendation for appointments, reassignments as presented in tonight's board materials.
I second.
I'll call for the vote, please.
Ms. Clementi? Mr. Farrell,
Aye.
Judge Mays,
Aye.
Mr. Voss,
Aye.
Dr. Wright.
Aye.
We'll move on now to the resolution for non-renewal of contracts. Superintendent.
Thank you. Thank you, President Voss. As you know, this is the time of year that we bring forth to the board non-renewals. And so, Mr. President and fellow board members, you have in front of you my recommendations for teacher contract non-renewals for the 2020-21 school year. So, Mr. Voss, I believe you have that resolution and those non-renewals.
I do. All board members have the resolution before them, resolution 12.2 action items, including those individuals listed on Exhibit 1 to the resolution, as resolution numbers 12.2.1 through 12.2.25. These are recommendations for non-renewal. You have the names of the people affected in front of you. They are associated with the numbers 12.2.1 through 12.2.25. We will dispense with reading all of the names and read the resolution 12.2.1 dash or through 12.2.25 as a motion. After a second and then vote. So whereas the Board of Education has reviewed the status of employees listed in item 12.2 Exhibit 1, H1, designated as 12.2.1 through 12.2.25, attached to and incorporated by reference into this resolution and contained in the Human Resources report, and has duty considered the matter of reemployment of said employees for the 2020-2021 school year. It is therefore resolved that the employees as listed in Exhibit 1, H1, designated as 12.2.1 through 12.2.25, and incorporated by this reference, shall not be reemployed for the 2020-2021 school year, and be it further resolved that the superintendent of schools or her designee is hereby directed to give timely written notice of said non-renewal to the employees as contained in Exhibit 1 to this resolution. We'll need a second from the board.
That was a motion, Mr. Voss?
It was.
Okay, I'll second.
Mrs. Patron, I'll call for the vote, please.
Ms. Clementi,
Aye.
Mr. Farrell, thank you. Mr. Farrell,
Aye.
Judge Mays,
Aye.
Mr. Voss,
Aye.
Dr. Wright.
Aye.
Moving now to 13.0 board discussion recommendations for the agenda. Is there any discussion or future agenda items from the board? And with there being no announcements, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.